Lady Whistledown here, and I assure you the rain in London washed up more than mud. It delivered a nurse into a duke's empty carriage and rattled every latch of propriety on the Hampshire road. Thus, with wheels hissing over cobbles and lightning for lantern, a single misstep opened a chapter written in rain. Watch out, gentle listener. At the next stop we shall ask, accident or providence? Subscribe to my scandal at once so you don't miss what happens next, and tell us where you're watching from. The posting yard drowned beneath a tempest, lanterns guttered, ostlers slipped, umbrellas fled. A young woman in a plain pelisse ran with a satchel clutched to her bodice. Verena, our village nurse, quick of hand and quicker of heart, arrived 3 minutes late and one thunderclap wet. The mail coach had gone. What does prudence advise when streets turn to knives? Shelter. What does desperation seize when a door gapes and a step is low? Opportunity. Verena sprang into the nearest equipage. A wet hem hissed. The door thumped, the wheels jolted. London dropped behind like a curtain. Opposite sat a gentleman who wore silence like a well-cut coat. No peacock's sparkle, only a level gaze and the notch between the brows where duty lives. Society knows him as Bryson, Duke of Lyndhurst Chase. Verena knew only the man across from her until he inclined his head and named himself with a convenient veil. "Camden," he said. "Mr. Camden." Spare your pearls. A titled man at night invites thieves. A titled name invites worse. Incognito is armour. Rain hammered the roof. The carriage rocked through ruts. Verena did what nurses do first, ordered her hands, wrung rain from gloves, folded them, composed herself in the corner as if neatness might render her invisible. "If you will set me down at the first inn, sir, I shall take a hack and trouble you no further." Mr. Camden considered the shining panes and black lanes. "To cast you into that would be the discourtesy," he replied. "We will put you by at the first posting-house where there is fire and shawl. Until then, be easy." She thanked him and listened. A nurse hears past thunder, the bit's faint chime, the wheel's complaint, the human noises too small for gentlemen. A cough, not fashionable, a raw bark from the box. Another, then a thin whimper. "Your coachman is not alone," she said. "The boy," Mr. Camden answered. "New. No proper cloak?" "A poor one." Verena had her satchel open before permission could tidy the moment. She tugged the ceiling cord. A footman's rain-slashed face appeared. "The lad is coughing," she called. "Bring him within or his chest will drown before the road clears." The footman blinked, then at Mr. Camden. "Do as she says," came the curt reply. A boy with rain in his hair and fright in his eyes slid onto the forward seat, shoulders shaking under a sodden wrap. Verena coaxed his mouth open, took his pulse, listened with the steadiness that quiets fear. "He burned himself cold," she said. "Fright and wet together. Warm him from within." "There is brandy," offered Mr. Camden. "There is ginger," said Verena, producing a paper twist and a battered tin. Hot water at 20 miles an hour is a poet's fancy. She compromised with a finger of spirit, a pinch of powdered root, and a scrap of sugar coaxed from the footman's pocket. Sip, small, breathe between. The boy obeyed as frightened creatures obey calm hands. Colour stirred. The cough softened from storm to scattered rain. Verena wrapped her shawl about his thin shoulders and remembered she was soaked. The gentleman opposite remembered then as well. He lifted his greatcoat and set it about her with the unobtrusive care of a man who prefers gratitude unnecessary. "You shall not martyr your lungs for my servant," he said. "It is for his chest," she returned, chin firm. "Very just." On they went. The city thinned to hedges, the hedges to fields slick with night. The lamp carved a tunnel through rain. Somewhere ahead, warmth. Somewhere behind, judgment. Between, a small republic of steam and leather and a pact neither spoke. "We are strangers, but we will be human. What matters is simple." He did not eject her. He promised a fire, and she governed his small world without petitioning for authority. The footman steadied the boy. Verena counted his breaths. Mr. Camden counted what? Perhaps the arithmetic by which respect takes root. A shudder passed under the wheels. The horses checked. The box called down. "Road's narrowed, sir. Wash out by the hedge." "Turn back," the footman shouted. The question hung like a blade. The lane behind was hazards, the lane ahead, unknowns. The boy coughed again, deeper now, heat bright under Verina's palm. She met Mr. Camden's gaze. He met hers. There are nights when propriety is a luxury and prudence an extravagance. The road held its breath around them, waiting. "Forward," he said, and the decision settled like a weight and a mercy at once. London fell farther, the fields closed in. The coach laboured through the narrows while rain rehearsed every lesson thunder ever taught. Verina steadied the boy and spoke in the voice that makes bravery possible. Quiet, ordinary, unafraid. Mr. Camden watched and did not interfere, which is a rarer courtesy than flowers and in some cases kinder. I confess my quill adores a ballroom slip, yet even I bow before the theatre of a closed carriage and two souls deciding what kindness costs. A woman's name, a gentleman's composure, a servant's breath. The lamps of the posting house were promised but not yet present. The road pinched to a cart's breadth where the washout bit the verge. Brakes groaned, the coachman swore softly. The boy shivered, then burned, then shivered again. "Another sip," Verina ordered. "And breathe." He obeyed. He breathed. Mr. Camden looked once to the window, once to the nurse, and then to the boy, as if weighing three truths at once: the storm that cannot be dismissed, the woman who will not be diminished, and the life that must not be lost. Forward, then. Tell me, listeners, could even you resist such temptation when safety and scandal share a seat? I kept my quill attentive. Rain rattled the roof, lamplight tunnelled the road, yet within, order came under Verina's hands. She had the boy's wrist held lightly, counting a pulse with the certainty of someone who has saved lives in poorer rooms than this. A loosened cravat, a lifted chin, a measured breath, each act simple, sufficient, decisive. The coach, lately a chamber of alarm, became an improvised infirmary. The footman hovered, drenched and anxious. "Hold the cup," she told him. "Small sips, breathe between." That humble draught of ginger and brandy tasted not of scandal but of sense. The boy's cough softened, colour returned. He whispered his name. Tom. "Good," Verina said, using it as if names themselves were medicine. "You are not drowning, Tom, you are frightened. Those are not the same." Opposite, Mr. Camden sat very straight. He watched with an attention that measured more than it wandered. "How do you know the fever is not the galloping kind?" he asked at last. "His eyes returned to me after each cough," she replied, still counting. "The heat sits in the brow, not behind the tongue. Fear holds his lungs. Delirium does not yet hold his mind. Keep him warm, quiet and breathing. And if it worsens? Then I buy him minutes until we find a fire. Minutes are the coin I carry." He weighed that and set aside the impulse to command. "What else do you require?" "A dry shirt when we stop. Blankets, hot water if Providence is generous, a corner out of draughts. No chatter." "It shall be arranged," he said, as one pays a rightful debt. The wheels shouldered through ruts. She wrung her hem and set it near the lamp to steam, obeying the one rule that matters: keep the patient warm. Mr. Camden spoke again, voice gentled. "You have the habit of those on whom others depend. Whom do you leave when you ride out at night?" "An aunt," Verina said. "Her hands dislike the rain. She keeps our household when they permit it." "Only the two of you?" "4. 2 parish children besides us, Lark and Jonah until they claim better names. The baker takes poultices when he cannot take coin." "Your parish approves?" "My parish approves results," she answered. "I am paid in gossip. I spend it carefully." A corner of his mouth acknowledged the wit. His eyes stayed grave. "Reputation is a heavy purse." "Lighter than hunger," she said, and after a beat, "lighter than shame." He looked out, then back to the woman who refused ornament in anyone's emergency. A muscle in his jaw flickered. I should like to think my own reputation useful. Useful reputations save lives, she returned, and touched Tom's temple. The heat had eased a fraction. She allowed herself one small breath that was not duty. The footman, seeking courage in talk, muttered about the lower bridge over the Blackwater and whether it would hold. At that single word, bridge, Mr. Camden's composure altered. It was a slight betrayal. Gloves adjusted without need, stillness too precise, a breath misplaced. He recovered carefully. "The bridge holds?" he asked, tone neutralized. "So I hear, sir," the footman said. "Men were to be sent last harvest, only the floods came and—" "That will do," Mr. Camden replied. Not harsh, yet definite, a door eased shut. Verena lifted her head. Nurses catalogue the unsaid as surely as symptoms. "Bridges can be mended," she offered, not consolation, but work. Not always in time. "Then the next in time," she said. "A new beam where the old failed. People cross because someone chooses to try." He looked at her as though the lamp had brightened, though of course it had not. Where he had merely measured, he now regarded. If you would understand Verena's stakes, imagine a ledger with 3 stubborn columns: meat, coal, candle. See an aunt who scolds kettles because kettles cannot be hurt. 2 children who sleep easier because their guardian keeps herself beyond reproach. A satchel patched and immaculate, instruments shining like small honest coins. Her reputation is not vanity, it is bread and a roof for those who share it. Mr. Camden resumed, questions softened by thought rather than sentiment. "You were bound for a case?" "A confinement in St. Bride's Lane. The midwife's sister took ill. I am to sit till dawn, then return to wrap my aunt's hands and chase lessons into Lark and Jonah. The mail coach waits for no one. And yet here you ride." "Here I ride," she said. No apology, merely fact. "Do they depend upon you alone?" "No one should depend upon one person alone," she replied, "but fewer fall when I keep my feet." "And who steadies you?" "Hot tea, honest work, a door that locks, the knowledge that somebody must." Tom stirred and coughed. She bent at once. "There now," she murmured. "In and out. The storm is outside. You are not the sky." He obeyed because she believed he could. Observe what mattered most. Authority passed between those two like a well-played instrument. He is used to sending letters that move men and timber. She is used to moving pain without letters. In that carriage they met at par. He asked fewer questions. She permitted small courtesies, his greatcoat settling about her shoulders, his hand steadying the cup while hers steadied the boy. Their fingers nearly touched upon the same poor porcelain, and for once neither recoiled. Empathy entered unannounced. Connection followed, cautious but unwilling to leave. Curiosity remained, wary, yes, but no longer hostile to wonder. The wheels juddered. Ahead, a smear of lamp promised an inn not yet reached. Within, the boy slept in earnest. Verena watched with the patience of sunrise. Mr. Camden considered a world in which pedigree yields, for a mile at least, to competence. "I set it down exactly so. Not a romance, no, not yet, but the first firm proof that 2 sovereign natures might learn to share a road today." "Then the next in time," she said. "A new beam where the old failed. People cross because someone chooses to try." He looked at her as though the lamp had brightened, though of course it had not. Where he had merely measured, he now regarded. If you would understand Verena's stakes, imagine a ledger with 3 stubborn columns: meat, coal, candle. See an aunt who scolds kettles because kettles cannot be hurt. 2 children who sleep easier because their guardian keeps herself beyond reproach. A satchel patched and immaculate, instruments shining like small honest coins. Her reputation is not vanity, it is bread, and a roof for those who share it. Mr. Camden resumed, questions softened by thought rather than sentiment. "You were bound for a case?" "A confinement in St. Bride's Lane. The midwife's sister took ill. I am to sit till dawn, then return to wrap my aunt's hands and chase lessons into Lark and Jonah. The mail coach waits for no one. And yet here you ride." "Here I ride," she said. No apology, merely fact. Do they depend upon you alone? No one should depend upon one person alone, she replied, but fewer fall when I keep my feet. And who steadies you? Hot tea, honest work, a door that locks, the knowledge that somebody must. Tom stirred and coughed. She bent at once. There now, she murmured. In and out. The storm is outside. You are not the sky. He obeyed because she believed he could. Observe what mattered most. Authority passed between those two like a well-played instrument. He is used to sending letters that move men and timber. She is used to moving pain without letters. In that carriage they met at par. He asked fewer questions. She permitted small courtesies, his greatcoat settling about her shoulders, his hand steadying the cup while hers steadied the boy. Their fingers nearly touched upon the same poor porcelain, and for once neither recoiled. Empathy entered unannounced. Connection followed, cautious but unwilling to leave. Curiosity remained, wary, yes, but no longer hostile to wonder. The wheels juddered. Ahead, a smear of lamp promised an inn not yet reached. Within, the boy slept in earnest. Verena watched with the patience of sunrise. Mr. Camden considered a world in which pedigree yields for a mile at least to competence. I set it down exactly so. Not a romance, no, not yet, but the first firm proof that two sovereign natures might learn to share a road today. A word given by a duke can feel like iron or like air. Verena weighed it with a professional's fingers. She was not equal to his fortune, yet she would be equal to his terms. Attraction ran beneath her caution like current under a bridge. Denial did as denial does, called itself prudence and looked straight ahead. Inside, the parlour fire chattered of comfort and indiscretion. Verena set the boundary with her stance. The Duke honoured it by taking the far chair. Their speech was deliberately dull. The boy's fever, the hour of dawn, the state of the roads. Every syllable said, "I will not step closer," and every heartbeat replied, "That is almost, but not quite, enough." They rose with the landlord to view the chambers. The stair smelled of soap and coal. The landing window clattered. The Duke paused on the threshold of a small room fitted with a narrow bed and a chased washstand. "This one shall do," Verena said. "For tonight," he returned. "Tomorrow we shall exchange in for sunlight." She curtsied because manners cost nothing. He bowed because remorse is best worn plain. "Good night, your—" She stopped, as if the syllables pricked. "Good night. Camden will do if you prefer it." "I prefer the truth," she said, and closed her door on the subject. Down in the yard, travel corrected itself, horses rubbed down, traces checked, lamps trimmed. It was there, between stable light and falling dark, that Hampshire's watchful eyes fastened upon our nurse. Magistrate Pierce, that ferret among ordinances, stood under the eaves pretending interest in a ledger. Instead he studied Verena as she crossed to the stairs beneath a postboy's lantern, then lifted his nose toward the rain. He did not bow. He calculated. He tucked his ledger and turned toward the street with a purpose that did not deserve the weather's blessing. What he intends is best told tomorrow. For tonight, keep only this. She is visible, he has seen, and the title that once sheltered now casts a longer, sharper shadow. The road from Basingstoke to Winchester carried cargo more combustible than parcels. Silence. Inside the Lyndhurst carriage, quiet glowed. Verena sat opposite his Grace, still Mr. Camden to strangers, never again to her, hands gloved, shoulders squared. Between them lay a map case, a sleeping boy, and a decision neither dared name. He broke the hush not with apology but with work. "Will you look?" he said, opening the map case. Paper sighed, a river's black thread, cottages, a chapel marked with a cross. "Flooded tenancies north of the Blackwater. The lower bridge remains suspect. If I shift barley from the south fields—" "You will starve the south and wet the north," Verena replied, leaning in. Her glove met his as she steadied the parchment. The touch sparked and vanished. "Begin with bodies, not barley. Move people first, grain after." He listened as men listen when probability sounds like hope. "Triage, then." "Triage," she affirmed. "The chapel is stone, Good. Clear pews, scrub floors, open both doors. Make it an infirmary for lungs and fevers. Send every able child for clean water before the river mud poisons the pots. Boil what you can. If the well runs shallow, assign hours and watch it. Store vinegar. Post one woman at the door with a list and another by the kettle with a ladle, and no man to talk over them. Herbs? Stock horehound, coltsfoot, thyme, willowbark, she said. Hang rosemary. Ginger for chills, honey for throats, mustard for calves when the chest refuses breath, and a ledger, names, symptoms, cups taken, hours slept. He steadied the other corner of the map. Her glove met his, practical as a brace. Skin did not meet skin, yet the carriage warmed. Curtis struggles with ledgers, he murmured, and winced. Then give him a rule and a chair, she answered. Men fail when left to float. They mend when asked to stand. I am accustomed to command, and to kindness. He folded the map. I wrestle both. So they travelled, not lovers, not indifferent, two natures submitting to the discipline of purpose. Longing learned patience. Winchester glimmered ahead. Gossip took wing the moment their wheels touched the yard. A chambermaid watched Verena descend after his grace and pinned the sight to her tongue. A postboy whispered, "The nurse from London," to a coachguard who would repeat it for ale. Magistrate Pierce, punctual as mildew, arrived as if summoned by envy's bell. He peered as though the world owed him secrets. His gaze found Verena's neat figure, her satchel, the respectful distance his grace kept, and he discounted the distance and treasured the proximity. Reputation would be the price. "The lady travels under the Duke's protection," the landlord said too eagerly. Pierce's mouth formed the tight little O one gives before writing another's name in a ledger. In the yard lamps, Bryson's control fit a fraction too tight, while Verena's poise cooled to iron. She spoke first, brisk as a scalpel. "I require a room with a bolt and a kettle." "You shall have both," the Duke said, before the landlord could bungle a syllable. "And a respectable attendant." Pierce tipped his hat without lowering it. "There is the matter of appearances, your sir. Winchester enjoys talk less than truth." "Then let us give it truth that needs no talk," Verena replied. "Daylight, doors open, a woman between." She turned to the landlord. "Rowena, the postmistress's cousin. I am told she does not sleep in storms." "She does not," he said, pleased. "Rowena!" A sturdy figure appeared with apron and authority. "I keep keys and count spoons," Rowena said, eyes missing nothing. "Engaged," Bryson said, "from this hour until the lady resumes her journey." Verena stood straight. She would not soften for him. She would not stiffen for Pierce. "I will see the chapel in your maps made ready," she said, not a promise but an expectation. "You shall," he answered, "in daylight, with doors open." "And with a woman between," Rowena added. Thus the night reconfigured. The Duke took the farther stair and the room that faced the stable rather than the street. Verena accepted a chamber with a bolt and a prudent hearth. Rowena planted a chair where both doors could be observed and fetched a kettle that behaved. Pierce denied the drama he had purchased, stalked away to trade in insinuations cheaper than facts. Desire did not retire, it learned manners. In the hush that follows arrangements, between kettle and cup, between latch and step, Bryson's hand brushed the air where Verena's had been, as if memory tried a rehearsal. She tied her glove tighter. Neither stared longer than polite. Both remembered longer than wise. By the hour's end, the yard had chosen its story. Servants prefer virtue they can see, a chaperone, a space between bodies, a light left burning where others may witness. Winchester's rumour mill, robbed of its best grain, ground coarser flour. Pierce took a sample and promised to sift. They parted for the night. He bowed deeper than rank requires. She curtsied no deeper than respect demands. Rowena nodded like a magistrate whose court admits only sense. If passion wished for a hallway tryst, it learned to wait for morning. When the bolt closed upon Verena's door and the other upon Bryson's regrets, their thoughts walked the same corridor. The map lay folded on his desk. Her glove lay folded on her washstand. Between map and glove stretched a road upon which neither wished to walk alone, and would not, if daylight and right company could make a path the righteous could not fault. So I set down this measure, longing under orders, scrutiny sharpening its knives, a duke wrestling the impulse to command and the call to be gentle, a nurse who will take neither coin nor kindness if it costs her name. Their carriage rides are classrooms, their hands when they meet sign treaties rather than seize liberties. The accident becomes a vow. Verena studied the maps and the rain-stained road and said, "I shall go to Lyndhurst." The berth she had meant to sit would find other hands. The flood would not. So she rode beside the Duke toward the estate that required mercy more than ceremony. Lyndhurst Chase rose from wet fields, its stone austere, its tenants anxious. Smoke thinned, river air clung, coughs stitched the lanes. Verena did not consult grandeur. She took the chapel and made it useful. Pews shoved back, floors scrubbed, windows opened, kettles set to boil. A table turned apothecary, her satchel unfolded into bottles and paper twists. "Ledger," she said. When a book arrived, she scratched columns. Name, ailment, draft, hour, no guesswork, basins at the door, ash, soap, boys to the well in turns, ration if it sulks, vinegar for the floor, rosemary to hang. Curtis, newly steward, came with keys and caution. "We generally keep the sick by their hearths," he ventured. "The chapel, your grace, has not been used so." "Then it learns," Verena replied. "Mark households short a pair of hands and send help. Post a watcher at the north well. Mud poisons more than boots." He shifted. "Some men do not relish orders from the person with a plan," Bryson said, even. He had entered without coat. "Let reluctance come to me." "Stools by the window," Verena continued. "Chests raised, lungs encouraged, honey for throats, willow for fevers, time for steam, a kettle at the door for those who mistake talk for help." Work replaced wonder, cups measured, breaths counted, names learned. Bryson discovered relief in usefulness. When she said window, he lifted sash. Stool, he fetched. Listen, he obeyed. He watched the arithmetic of care and felt a harsher sum push forward, the price of delays. It drew him to a low room off the chapel, where ledgers slept. He opened one. The page yawned like an old bruise. "Last harvest," he said, "the lower bridge. The steward pressed. Planks, support, south anchor. I was away then in London. I signed upon return. The storm came first. He crossed at dusk." The sentence ended at the river. Verena folded linen and let silence weigh. "You were not the flood," she said. "I was the hour," he answered. "The hour that came too late. Since then every beam looks like a sentence I began and never finished." He turned fully, offering not excuse but wreckage. "I have led by never erring. It muffled everyone. The last man spoke and drowned." "Perfection is a quiet tyrant," she replied. "It keeps rooms so hushed no one warns the stair is broken." He shut his eyes, opened them. "Teach me to lead without commanding the air." "Begin by hearing those who breathe it," she said, setting the ledger beneath her palm. "Ask Curtis where fear hobbles him. Ask tenants which bridge they dread. Ask the women how they keep children's lungs open when the reeds bloom. Then order what their answers require. Listening is the work." He took humility like medicine. "Curtis," he called. The steward came quick. "I failed the man before you," Bryson said. "I failed you by making silence safe. From this hour nothing waits on my pride. Tell me what I least wish to know, and I will hold the ladder while you climb to say it. Begin with the wells, then the bridge. Speak as if my title were deaf." Curtis's face found purpose. "Yes, Your Grace." It meant partnership. The chapel unlearned despair by increments. A boy's fever bent to willow. An old man's cough softened after time. A mother slept when honey quieted her throat, and a neighbour watched the baby breathe. Verena moved cot to cot with tenderness that refused spectacle. Bryson shadowed without smothering, his strength turning to furniture, his attention a clean flame. Passion altered its shape. It was not the heat of a closed carriage. It was respect so keen it ached, a want braided to admiration. He had been drawn to steadiness. Now he understood it as leadership, unafraid of being human. She felt his hunger steady into readiness for guidance. Still, the river remembered. Desperation hummed beneath every task. Steam, tally, boot. Ledger, Verena would say, and his hand was there. Name? Thomas Rook. Hour? Second after dawn. Draft? Willow honey. Rhythm outpaced rumour. At dusk, the ward breathed almost easily. Verena stood at the open window. Hedgerows exhaled. Bryson stood beside her and did not reach. I cannot put a life back in its line, he said. But I can mend the page where others must write. Then start mending, she answered. Not flattery, which would be cruel, but instruction, which is mercy. This is the pivot. She chose his cause. He chose to deserve her choice. Curtis learned to stand. Tenants found their duke at eye level. The chapel smelled of vinegar and hope. The failed bridge would not rise by grief. Yet another, between command and care, was laid, plank by deliberate plank. Bryson watched Verena knot a bandage and felt the knot tie beneath his ribs. He said nothing. She set the bowl on the sill and felt the air change. She said nothing. Passion does not always announce itself. Sometimes it passes a ladle, scribbles a name, denies the fever another hour. That is how it burns without scandal, hotter, cleaner, committed. Tomorrow, he said, we begin with the wells. And with listening, she said. He inclined his head to the new order. And with listening. Beyond the chapel, rain thinned to a silver mist, and news travelled faster than carts. The Duke worked in his shirt-sleeves. The nurse kept tally. The steward asked and answered. Fate had betrayed them with water and time. They replied with buckets, ledgers, and humbled grace. Call it passion, duty, or penance. Under that roof it became a promise that would demand its price and pay its dividends. It seems like the Duke is already drawn to Verena, and now eyes are watching in the shadows. Subscribe so you don't miss what this love causes. Is it destruction or redemption? There are storms that fall from the heavens and storms that arrive in boots with a ledger. Magistrate Pierce preferred the latter. He came to Winchester not with proof but with appetite, sniffed the chapel's vinegar air, and decided that mercy must be taxed. He wrote nothing, yet 1,000 lines appeared in the mouths of men who mistake suspicion for duty. By dusk, his 3 favourite phrases travelled faster than fever. Duke's nurse, kept woman, parish funds. I track a rumour's itinerary as generals track regiments, yard to coffee room, library to drawing rooms, cards to columns. By the time it reached Cheapside, it had learned to count. Parish funds. Verena had made no pledge to the ton. Her vows were to breathe and warmth and numbered cups. Yet the visibility that saved reputations yesterday threatened to unmake them now. The chapel's doors stood open, Rowena kept her chair, the kettle sang, and still the tide ran black. Usefulness is no armour when a man prefers the cut of a woman's ruin. Pierce did not challenge Bryson properly. He did something cleverer and crueler. He examined aloud. So many cottagers, he murmured in the yard, never raising his voice. So much porridge, so many tinctures. Who pays? A duke's purse, or the parish funds conveniently tended by a certain nurse? He never accused, he only assisted the imagination of others. London, fond of virtue in the abstract and of gossip in the particular, obliged him. My desk received notes tied with blue ribbon and hypocrisy. A viscountess hoped I would warn the public against the peril of lady physicians. A rector begged me to defend the sanctity of parish accounts. I reached for a sharper nib. Within the chapel the change was quieter, but more lethal. Men who had stood meekly for instructions yesterday stood at a distance. Curtis's jaw became a battlement. He wished to bark down every whisper and knew he could not. Bryson's attention strained at its tether. The carriage of his shoulders asked to fight. The discipline of his mouth forbade it. It was Verena who measured the harm precisely. She weighed not her feelings, but the infirmary's credibility. "If I remain," she said to Curtis where the north light fell thin, "the tale becomes the ward. Mothers will keep children home, men will grasp at ale instead of willow, and the ledger's numbers will starve into elegy. I will ruin your reputation. I, who respect courage even when it bleeds the page, record her next act without embroidery." She found Rowena, placed the ward's keys in those just hands, and set the rules again. Windows open at dawn, water fetched in turns, names and hours exact, kettles guarded, no man to talk over the women who pour. Then she smoothed the linen on the nearest cot and went to find the Duke. He stood in the side room with the old ledger open, rain scrawling its commentary upon the pane. "It will pass," he began, "because men born to command sometimes mistake vows for weather." "It will not," she said gently, "not while I stand here to make it convenient. Send me to my village now so this work may breathe." "Now?" He flinched as though the syllable could bruise. "At dusk? In rain?" "Before midnight," she insisted, "with a maid and a post-chaise, no fanfare, no gratitude that can be counted as coin, only speed and the appearance of wisdom." He braced his hands on the table, as if bracing the parish upon his palms. "This is my failure." "This is not a confession," she replied. "It is triage." All the while the rumour marched, collecting ribbons. Duke's nurse, kept woman, parish funds. It gained a rhythm, it learned to waltz. I set down only what daylight can bear, a storm of words and a woman who chose to step out of it so others might breathe. Hearthlight failed in the chapel as the rain resumed. The fire had been prudent all day. Toward evening it sank into a red coin and expired. The ward lay hushed, the kettles muttered, the bells did not ring. If there is a sound to exile, it is not footsteps leaving, it is the absence that follows. Bryson arranged the chaise at once. Rowena packed a basket with bread, strong tea and honey. Curtis stood in the doorway holding more apologies than hands. They met beneath the porch, where the river smell rises after rain. No touch, no promise, no scene fit for ballads. He bowed as a man bows to a sentence. She curtsied to the future care of the ward she had spared. "Your Grace," she said, because names must be correct when everything else is wrong. "Miss Verena," he managed. Rowena climbed in first, because propriety does not retire even when hope does. Verena followed, set her satchel on her knees, and looked once at the chapel's open door. Work remained in that doorway like a faithful dog, uncomprehending but willing. Then the door of the chaise shut, the lamp swung, the horse shook its mane, and the road drew a line between those who stayed to listen and the one who left to save the listening. I watched the chaise until the rain erased it. The ton will sigh over tragedy at breakfast and be merry by supper, but in the interval between sigh and merriment, remember the arithmetic that mattered. Fewer children kept away, fewer mothers turned from help, fewer numbers in the ledger transfigured into names on a stone. Love collapses easily under duty's weight when duty gains a mob, and love has only two hands. In such weather, even a duke's steps sound like surrender. In such weather, a nurse's chamber is silent enough to break a heart. This was love's exile, plain, cold, and mercilessly observed tonight here. And yes, I wrote it. Who else would? Lady Whistledown here, and I have marked the minute a man stops drowning in pride and chooses love. The chaise that bore our nurse away dwindled into weather. The lamps went out like 2 coins. He allowed her leave, honour before appetite, and stood beneath the chapel porch accepting the emptiness that remained. Then Bryson, Duke of Lyndhurst Chase, went home to the tribunal he fears. Morella, the dowager, awaited him in the music room. She dismissed the footman, opened the curtain so the storm heard, and sat him opposite the old Broadwood. "So," she said, scanning mud, eyes, conscience, "you sent away the only voice that would not flatter you." "She asked it," he replied. to protect the ward. Clever woman. Sit. Listen. Her tone could tune instruments. Grief is not governance. You have ruled like a penitent, not a duke, and the magistrate eats penitence. If you want the nurse safe, and do not wince at wanting, you must protect the woman and the work in the open. Secrecy belongs to shame. Is there shame? No. Then act as if you believe it. He tried the excuse he keeps polished. I signed too late on the bridge. A man died. Precision is my only apology. You will not raise the dead by freezing the living, she answered. Build what was not built. Stand where mud once took you down. Define the subject so whispers carry your meaning, not theirs. The decision rang like iron. Very well, I will meet Pierce and the ton on ground of my choosing. He lifted his head. Mercy will be my authority. Again, Morella ordered. Mercy will be my authority. That is governance. He rang. Elias arrived, tidy as a ledger. Bryson's voice steadied into command that sounded at last like care. Elias, draw endowment papers tonight for a parish infirmary in Miss Verena's village, St. Bride's Lane. Not to my sole name. Create a trust with 3 parish wardens, 2 matrons of unimpeachable repute, and the rector. My role limited to funds and repairs. Appoint Rowena, Winchester's sentinel, as provisional matron. Salaried, keys hers, accounts public. Sum? Elias asked, quill at the gallop. £5,000 to found, replenished quarterly from South Meadow rents and a fixed bank dividend. Medicines at cost. No pauper refused. Draft a second deed. A bursary to train village girls in nursing under Rowena. Wages decent, references written, widows preferred. Witnesses? Bring your namesake at chambers with 2 barristers. Invite the rector. Beg Mrs. Clarita Pierce. Yes, the magistrate's sister. Summon the lady patronesses of our county hospital and Mrs. Rowena. Chaperonage immaculate. My mother presiding. Mrs. Suzanne Bennett and Lady Teresa Camden attending. Post notices that the deed will be read tomorrow at noon in the vestry. Doors open, windows wide. Morella nodded once. Scaffolding had appeared. Bryson continued. Prepare a letter to Magistrate Pierce requesting his presence to certify the reading and stating that accounts will be posted monthly and examined quarterly by his office at my request. Prepare another to the hungriest editor. Columns on governance. Dry as toast, irresistible as money. Elias lifted an eyebrow. And Miss Verena's name? Not traded for spectacle, Bryson said. The structure must render her reputation unnecessary to debate. She shall be invited as consulting nurse by the trustees after the house opens, never publicly alone with me, never without a female attendant whose livelihood depends on rules observed. Write that clause. Underline it twice. Travel. Tomorrow morning. Coach and 4, my mother, 2 matrons, 2 secretaries and a chaplain. We pass Winchester at a walk and collect Rowena. No masks, no aliases. We go to the vestry, read the deed, place keys in women's hands, deposit funds at the parish bank, call upon Miss Verena's aunt with coal, tea and respect. Nothing gaudy. Then we return. Work continues at Lyndhurst. Gossip may gnaw its tail. Morella's eyes gentled, which in her is blessing. There he is, she said, my son who builds. I thought I had forgotten how. You were asking the wrong part of yourself, she replied. One more lesson. In that vestry, do not explain your heart. Explain the work. If Pierce scowls, give him tasks. Gladly, Bryson said. He turned to Elias. Lastly, settle the lower bridge. Advertise for engineers. Pay before they are clever. Build in stone. Hang a bell on each side to warn when river rises. Commission Curtis to take testimony from every tenant who must cross. Publish dates. I will countersign within the hour. It shall be done, Elias said. The house woke to the good racket of midnight purpose. Messengers loosed, lamps trimmed, the estate office bright as a forge. I do not flatter a duke. I document a pivot, indeed, carefully. There is courage that gallops and courage that sits with ink until a future appears. He chose both, and the household remembered how to breathe. Before he slept, if he slept, Bryson wrote one more note by his own hand. Not to the lady, to the parish. Your infirmary is a promise made in public, so no woman's name need be spent as coin, it read. He sealed it with the Lyndhurst device, not as ornament, but as bond. Dawn began its climb over Whetstone. The storm, finding nothing more to bully, slunk along the hedges. Morella went to her rest with satisfied exhaustion. Elias stacked drafts like planks. Curtis, roused and sent, gathered statements by candle. And Bryson stood once in the doorway of the chapel and bowed, not to guilt, but to the labour ahead. Remember this hour, indeed, reader, for it will do you credit in conversation. Pride knelt and rose transformed. He will face the magistrate. He will face the ton without disguise. He will say plainly, mercy will be my authority, and it shall look like keys in women's hands, and numbers anyone may read. Whether love will be granted audience remains uncertain. That summons waits for tomorrow at noon, in a small vestry, with doors, at last, wide open. My ink ready, stood by the pump as noon told and rain thinned. Magistrate Pierce arrived with a clerk and a practised worry. A duke's nurse, parish funds, unchaperoned errands, London must be vigilant for a weak duke, he breathed. The Lyndhurst coach drew up. Bryson descended without disguise. Elias followed with a tin box and a red thread folio. Curtis came steady, and the dowager's companion, Lady Teresa, entered with Rowena, key-bearing and calm. Pierce bowed. Your Grace chooses an exposed hour. Exposure suits honest work, Bryson replied, mounting the pump step. Winchester, attend. Elias broke the seal. Bryson's voice carried. This deed establishes an infirmary at St. Bride's Lane. Trustees, the rector, 2 wardens, 2 matrons, and Mrs. Clarita Pierce, steward of accounts. Keys to Rowena. Funds here. He touched the tin. Ledgers posted monthly, books examined quarterly by the magistrate's office at my request. I am donor, not master. Elias read the clauses. Plain bread for a famished square. Lady Teresa signed for the dowager. Mrs. Clarita signed. Wardens and matrons followed. Seals took. Curtis stepped forward. Mr. Curtis remains steward, Bryson said, with new oversight. Tenant councils meet fortnightly, minutes posted at the chapel door. Bridge works begin Monday in stone. A bell will hang at each approach. Crews named and paid on Saturdays, the chaplain counting aloud. If I err, tell me, and I will change the order. The air shifted from prying to purpose. Pierce tried one pin. And the nurse? Where does she stand? Rowena lifted her chin. With the rules, with the keys. Bryson did not flinch. Miss Verena is engaged as medical officer for relief by the trustees, with salary and staff appointed by them. She is not mine. She is not yours. She is the parish's. If she returns, she will work in daylight, doors open, women's hands on every key. The clerk entered names. The tin sighed as coin settled. Bryson raised his head. A personal declaration, not petition, pledge. I will court Miss Verena in daylight and under every watchful eye. Words tidied the street. The crowd's posture changed. Guardianship replaced appetite. Pierce examined his boots and bowed. Then the quarterly books will be welcome, and my sister will serve. See that she is thanked, Bryson said, already turning to business. Lady Teresa marked each seal. Rowena placed the smallest key in Mrs. Clarita's palm. Curtis took his papers. Elias tied the thread and shut the tin. The magistrate's clerk flourished. Rain ceased. Sun laid a narrow coin along the gutters. The bell stilled. I closed my notebook with a private snap. Merchants unbarred their shutters as if the deed itself were light. A cheesemonger pressed a round into Rowena's hands for the ward and received a list of portions instead of thanks. The rector offered a brief blessing, short enough to be useful, and fixed the notice with a nail and a smile meant for doubters. Pierce, boxed by his own sister's new dignity, instructed his clerk to note the particulars, which the young man did with an eagerness that bordered on joy. Bryson spoke aside to Curtis. You told me truths I did not wish to hear. Continue. With oversight, sir, Curtis said, and they shook hands in full view. Elias pinned a second bill beside the first. Market days for supplies, an address for complaints, the hours a mother might find a woman at the door. Lady Teresa gathered 2 widows to witness the counting of blankets, thereby teaching half the square how to keep score without malice. Men shouldered timber toward the lower road, boys ran messages, girls washed cups like bells. Books and bridges, both set right, one with ink, the other with stone, began to quiet the appetite that had hunted blood. Gossip starved, gratitude ate in small bites, and in the hush after the bell I heard what matters most in any town that means to survive a flood: the first unafraid laughter. Write it in your ledgers and on your lips, and remember who insisted. Today the square chose honour. London gained not a corrected duke, but a redeemed one. My pen composed, reports a quieter triumph than drums can manage. Verena reached home the way a good tide returns, clean, steady, with gifts in its wake. Her doorway, once besieged by speculation, stood open to respectable callers. The rector with tea and his ledger, Mrs. Clarita Pierce, brisk as an abacus, with a sealed packet bearing Lyndhurst wax. Rowena, unflappable, with a basket of folded linen and an even-folded smile. The gossip that sought to label her dissolved upon contact with ordinary decency. Names intact, work expanded. Such are the dividends when truth is witnessed by women who keep the keys. The letters, note this, for paper can rebuild what storms undo, arrived in clean hands and clearer prose. The first announced the endowment read in the market square, trustees named, funds banked, ledgers to be posted monthly. The second invited Verena to serve as consulting nurse under the vestry's seal, not the Duke's indulgence. The third, shortest and most carefully worded, came from Bryson himself. No poetry, only plain honour. I ask leave to call with chaperonage and at the parish hour, that my admiration may be known in daylight and never interrupt your duty. She accepted because she liked the Duke too. Admiration is a small word, daylight made it strong. The aunt who keeps Verena's house, sensible woman, accepted the arrangement with a neat nod and a list of callers' hours. Mrs. Clarita presented herself as chaperone on first occasions. Rowena relieved her on second. The rector took to walking the garden paths at a studied distance, head turned decorously toward the roses, whenever talk drifted into a hush that was not quite professional. I approve. Nothing so discourages scandal as witnesses who can pray and count. Thus, proper courtship began. Escorted garden walks beneath a sky rinsed by recent weather. Parish rounds made shoulder to shoulder, one in dark coat, one in serviceable muslin. Laughter by the day fire when damp boots steamed and a kettle argued with itself. They exchanged no vows and made a liturgy of small usefulness. Bryson fetched heavy jars from high shelves and learned the names of herbs that comfort lungs. Verena learned the stubbornness of dukes who have decided to listen and found it far less dangerous than the stubbornness of those who never would. Children, I must tell you, are aristocrats of perception. They bowed to the Duke once, then accepted him as a tall bearer of blankets whose pockets mysteriously produced sugared almonds exactly at the end of a bitter draught. Mothers glanced from Verena's hands to Bryson's patience and understood both. Men from the yards measured him by his willingness to stand in mud and to pay on time. Finding him competent at both, they had nothing more to say, which is the most generous verdict a working man affords a title. The infirmary took shape in St. Bride's Lane as neatly as a well-laid table. Keys lived in Rowena's apron. The ledger posts appeared each month at the vestry door in a hand anyone could read. Curtis's reports on the bridge repairs, transferred faithfully by Elias, arrived punctually, countersigned by the chaplain who counted wages aloud. If the magistrate sniffed, his sister's ink outpaced his breath. I do adore a family where the brightest pen belongs to a woman. And what of the pair who teach us more than a sermon on repentance? They found a rhythm that would not be hurried, a stroll between afternoon and sunset, while Mrs. Clarita pretended to inspect gooseberries, a visit to a cottage where a cradle must be rocked without waking the mother. Quiet talk at the hearth while Verina's aunt mended a hem and Rowena counted lint and needles with purposeful fuss. Nothing furtive, nothing grand, just kindness in the open air, which, as I have learned, is the most subversive spectacle of all. In time, London ceased to whisper against and began to whisper for. Invitations addressed to Miss Verena appeared, not to parade her, but to place her where useful talk could be heard. The dowager's companion brought a basket of novels and a scolding. Rest is a tonic you will take without protest. Bryson obeyed the same prescription, learning that governance could include reading aloud to a tired nurse while the town pretended not to eavesdrop at the window. I will not gild what did not occur. No proposals erupted like fireworks. No rings were flashed across parlours. The future was hinted rather than rushed. A sketch drawn in pencil. A porch with 2 cups. A ward where girls trained to keep clean books and cleaner basins. A house where misfortune might bring one to the door and dignity would escort one away. Service first, love alongside. That, gentle hearts, is the geometry they chose. For the sentimental among you, I provide the image worth framing. The repaired bridge, stone now, not wishful timber, opened at dusk on an evening when the wide Hampshire sky had the grace to blush. The parish gathered at a distance, men who laid the courses, women who kept the kettles, children whose mothers had warned them not to scuff new parapets. The chaplain said little and wisely. Curtis, with a pride that sat well upon him, presented the bell rope. Bryson stood back so the ward's widows might walk first. Verena followed with Rowena, because triumph is safest in company. At the crown of the arch, Verena paused to look down where water had once carried away a man and 1,000 unspoken sentences. Bryson joined her, not touching. One does not crowd a woman at the border of memory. She turned her palm up, not an invitation, an acknowledgement, and he set his hand in hers with the caution of a man who means to keep what he asks. No words. The bell spoke for them, a clear note that declared repairs complete and labour continuing. The river, chastened and newly bridled, approved. They stood thus while dusk sweetened into usefulness, and London, meaning you, my dears, learned a lesson longer than fashion's hem. The boldest declaration can be the smallest honest gesture, made on a sound structure, witnessed by the people a pair intend to serve. When a duke learns that, he becomes worth the title. When a nurse accepts it, she becomes partner to more than a man. She consents to the work. So the tale closes with hands meeting where stone holds firm, with ledgers legible, with keys in capable aprons, with the tongue reduced blessedly to applauding what anyone may inspect. If invitations are sent in future, I shall note them without embroidery. If vows are spoken, I shall report them in full, including the provisions for warm fires and well-paid staff. Until then, let contentment reign in St. Bride's Lane and purpose at Lyndhurst. Let Rowena rule her cupboards. Let Curtis count his bells. Let Elias stamp his seals. Let Mrs. Clarita temper the magistrate with an inkpot, and let 2 people walk the long, luminous path between usefulness and joy. Do not mistake quiet for absence. Some victories are so completely won that the city has only to whisper, "Ah," and carry on. Do you believe redemption rewrites every sin of pride, listeners? Seal your answer and keep your eyes on Lyndhurst. My quill is ever ready. Enjoyed the story? Don't forget to subscribe.